It's Saturday night in Gainesville, Florida. Sergeant Nick Ferrara of the Gainesville Police Department is out on patrol when he spots a group of college students outside a bar. He strikes up a conversation, then asks if they want to play a game. The rules are simple. He'll take one photo of each of them, and within seconds, he'll be able to identify their full name and any available social media accounts they have. One by one, he snaps their pictures. 4 out of the 5 students are identified. The students are stunned, wondering how this officer just pulled off this incredible party trick. Facial recognition has always been somewhat of a science fiction nightmare.
We have facial recognition software?
Facial recognition.
Facial recognition. Facial recognition.
From personalized ads identifying people by their face and Minority Report to a serial killer using this technology to track down his next victim in Black Mirror. The last one at first seems a little bit sci-fi, but not only is it possible, it's disturbingly simple. With public data sites and online facial recognition tools nowadays, a stranger can now pick your face out of a crowd and within seconds uncover your name and your home address, thanks almost entirely to the power of social media. If this video hasn't been re-uploaded by some random Twitter user, chances are you're watching this on YouTube, the largest video sharing platform there will probably ever be. Any would-be competitor is either dead on arrival or caters to a very specific community. Buried in this graveyard of YouTube clones is a site that is much stranger than the rest, and one you've probably never even heard of. Video.com. Video, created in 2009 by San Francisco software developer Wonton Thought, was revolutionary, not in its content, approach to web design, or slightly exotic name, but in its marketing. Marketing is basically the hardest part of starting a new website, especially when you're competing with a monopoly. But within days of its release, video spread like wildfire, mainly through Google Talk. Google Talk users would receive a seemingly innocent message from one of their contacts, followed by a link to Video. If you took the bait, you were taken to a page asking for your Google credentials. The moment you entered in your info, you were allegedly redirected to a re-upload of The Lonely Island's Jizz in My Pants. And Video hijacked your Google account, sending that same message to everybody on your contact list. This is what is known as a worm. Video quickly became synonymous with video virus. Google issued a statement urging people not to go to the site. Browsers displayed warnings when a user did attempt to go to video.com. The San Francisco Chronicle, Wall Street Journal, and the New York Times reported on the incident. The San Francisco Police Department were looking to speak to Juan, and pretty soon Video's hosting service suspended their account for violating their rules. Video was no more. Just a few weeks later, Juan would re-release the site with a new domain and attributed the worm to being just a bug in our code. But the damage was done. Juan had already earned a reputation, not as the next Mark Zuckerberg, but as a guy who manages to make websites spread like viruses. So he did what any reasonable person would do. He disappeared. Took a random corporate engineering job, cashed out when the company was sold in 2015, spent his time traveling the world, and even had a brief attempt at becoming a musician. So why are we talking about this random web developer? Well, in the summer of 2016, Juan went to Cleveland, Ohio, with his friend, the political activist Charles Johnson, to watch Donald Trump take the stage at the Republican National Convention. On the second morning of this convention, Johnson took Juan to meet a friend of his, billionaire PayPal co-founder and alleged antichrist, Peter Thiel. They took an Uber to Thiel's mansion in Shaker Heights. There, over breakfast, they spoke extensively about one thing: Gawker. Johnson had taken a lawsuit out against Gawker for defamation. Juan hated Gawker for how they'd mocked him after the video incident, even poking fun at his sexuality. And Thiel also notoriously had a feud with Gawker for many of the same reasons. Thiel hated Gawker so much, he'd secretly spent $10 million helping the wrestler Hulk Hogan sue the site after they published a video of him sleeping with his friend's wife. That lawsuit eventually led to Gawker's bankruptcy. The three of them bonded over their hate for this website. And just 2 days later, Johnson and Juan were no longer just attendees at the Republican National Convention. They were now VIPs. They got to sit closer to the stage as Thiel gave his speech.
Now we are told that the great debate is about who gets to use which bathroom. This is a distraction from our real problems. Who cares?
Followed by the man himself. It was this trip that planted the seed for Juan's next project. Juan and Johnson wanted a tool that could help make decisions about strangers, They wanted something that could find information on other attendees at the convention so they could know whether or not that stranger was even worth knowing. After the convention, they went their separate ways. Juan back to New York and Johnson to California. Johnson knew to build this tool that they envisioned, they were going to need help. Not from another programmer, but someone more experienced in business, someone with credibility. Enter Richard Schwartz, a former political operator from New York who'd worked for Rudy Giuliani. Johnson emailed both Juan and Schwartz and set up a meeting for them in New York. That meeting seemed to have worked out pretty well. By September, the three of them were actively working on this project, emailing each other back and forth frequently. Schwartz wanted to take this idea in a practical direction, something that could be used for security, something you could sell to law enforcement or to corporate clients. Juan was more interested in something fringe, not just a tool that could pull information on any unsuspecting victim, but something that could tell you whether or not someone is going to be a criminal. Saying in one email, "I do believe in genetic determinism. If criminality or other traits are heritable, it should show up in the face." He singled out the Ashley Madison data breach, where over 30 million people were exposed for cheating, and called it a gold mine. He wanted to cross-reference those emails with Facebook profiles. Juan wanted to use the images of cheaters, killers, and drug addicts to find shared facial features to see if a computer could learn how to spot bad people on site. This is essentially eugenics dressed as a startup. By January 2017, the three of them had a business agreement and now a new domain name, smartchecker.com. While Juan was busy building the tool, Johnson was busy building connections. Forbes reported around this time that Johnson was working with Peter Thiel and Trump's transition team to recommend candidates for Trump's administration. Later that month, he also hosted a Q&A on Reddit where he implored Trump to crush the communists in Silicon Valley and called into question the existence of the Holocaust gas chambers. Meanwhile, Juan got a Smart Checker prototype up and running. Using open source code from GitHub, Smart Checker could now pull photos and social media accounts from just an email and even guess political leanings based on who they followed. On the eve of Trump's inauguration, a group of conservatives held a party called the Deplorable. Juan, Johnson, other conservatives such as Martin Shkreli, and even Peter Thiel were in attendance that night. Lacey McCauley, a member of the DC Anti-Fascist Coalition, helped organize a protest outside the Deplorable, but Lacey herself had another plan. She intended to infiltrate this event, disguised as a conservative woman, allegedly hoping to record whatever was happening inside. At the same time, the coalition had suspicions of their own. They suspected that a new member of the group, a guy named Tyler, was he himself a conservative sent to spy on them. So they, allegedly, hatched a scheme to find out. Members of this coalition invited Tyler to Comet Ping Pong, the DC pizza place notorious for the pizza conspiracy theory. There, they told him of a plan to stink bomb the Deplorable from the inside to literally ruin the party. They had hoped that giving Tyler this false information would somehow benefit them and out Tyler as a spy. Tyler was a spy, sent by the right-wing activist group Project Veritas. Tyler had filmed all his meetings, including the one at the pizza place, and members of the coalition that attended that meeting were brought up on conspiracy charges. As for Lacey, she never even managed to get inside. Though she had registered for the event, her ticket never came through. What she didn't know at the time, and what we know now, is that this was because her name had been flagged as a high-risk individual. We know this because 3 months later, Juan pitched Smart Checker to the Hungarian government through email. In the presentation, it was revealed that Smart Checker, using the email Lacey used to register for the event, managed to find 3 photos of her, 9 of her social media accounts, 2 hacked databases where her password showed up, and predicted based on her Twitter activity that she was likely a member of Antifa. The presentation for Hungary also included slides on how the government could use the tool to crack down on pro-democracy activists inside the country, scan every passenger on incoming flights for problematic individuals, or patrol the border using drone technology, which was in development. Around this time, Juan met Terrence Liu, a PhD student from China studying computational physics. After a short tech demo, Liu was down to help Juan work on the project. With Terrence's help, the prototype got sharper, got faster, it was more accurate. They started feeding it faces by the millions. Back in 2017, Venmo had a public feed of transactions that would update in real time, meaning every 2 seconds, Juan's program would receive hundreds of new faces attached with names and usernames. By June, Smart Checker had scraped over 2 million faces from Venmo and Tinder alone. But faces take space, and space costs money. So who better to ask for an investment than your new billionaire friend, Peter Thiel. In July, Thiel agreed to invest $200,000 into the startup. For perspective, this is the equivalent of someone worth $1 million spending 12. But to even accept this investment, Smart Checker needed to exist legally. In August, Smart Checker was officially incorporated in the state of Delaware, with 2 shareholders, Wonton Thought and Richard Schwartz. Johnson was not included. It's unclear what Johnson actually contributed outside of his connections, and he does have the longest list of controversies on his Wikipedia page I've ever seen, so Smart Checker now had money, a legal address, and a great prototype. But there was just one problem. Nobody wanted to buy it. Schwartz, being the savvy businessman he is, decided to turn Smart Checker into a political consulting firm. Enter Smart Checker Corporate Polling and Social Media Services, with the main selling point being extreme opposition research you can't get anywhere else. One political candidate who decided to take him up on this offer was self-described pro-white businessman Paul Nealon. Schwartz, along with a new contractor named Douglas Mackey, spent 3 months working on Nealon's campaign. Mackey even had access to Nealon's personal Facebook account. The results were pretty underwhelming. Nealon eventually cut ties with the political firm, but before he did, he dropped a bombshell revelation. Douglas Mackey was actually operating online under an alias, Ricky Vaughn, a notorious far-right Twitter account known for pushing racial conspiracy theories and fake voting information, which would eventually land Mackey in jail. After the revelation, certain corners of the internet, blogs, forums, 4chan threads, all lit up trying to figure out what Smart Checker really was and who was behind it. Pretty soon the search results for the company were filled with problematic links, so they pulled out of politics and decided that Smart Checker needed a completely fresh start. In December of 2017, Schwartz and Wan quietly registered a new domain. A few months later, they filed new paperwork in Delaware to make it official. But as with any rebrand, there was one tiny problem. Charles Johnson. The name change tipped Johnson off about the original corporate filing and his lack of shares. So to keep things quiet, they made a deal with him. 10% equity, split between Johnson, his ex-wife, and his daughter, in exchange for an airtight NDA. Now the company had a new name, a clean slate, no politics, no detours, just one singular focus, facial recognition. And the company's new name, Clearview AI.
Clearview AI.
Clearview AI.
You've probably heard of Clearview, at least in passing. It's more recognizable than Smart Checker, certainly more recognizable than Video. Clearview was a fresh start for the company. And most importantly, this tool was now more powerful than ever. By the end of 2018, it had scraped over 1 billion photos from the internet. Photos pulled from Venmo, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube thumbnails, news sites, blogs, all indexed, cataloged, and searchable by face. If someone uploaded a selfie, Clearview can not only tell you their name, but also show you almost every photo of them ever posted online. And when they pitched this tool to venture capitalists, they didn't just explain it. In one case, Schwartz and Wan met with an investor named David Scalzo. Wan snapped a quick photo of him, ran it through the app, and within seconds, it returned his LinkedIn profile and a photo of him taken directly from his firm's website. Scalzo immediately invested $200,000. And with that, got access to the app himself. Other investors like Naval Ravikant, CEOs, billionaires, celebrities, all had private access to this superpower application before it was even public knowledge.
Like, I have an app in my phone, in my pocket right now. It's a facial recognition app. I could hold it up to anybody's face here and like find exactly who you are, what internet accounts you're on, what they look like. That's terrifying.
In the winter of 2018, after getting a tip from a former cop, Schwartz and Wan show up to a Brooklyn precinct to run a test for the New York City Police Department. They load in a few shitty ATM camera stills that had mostly been written off and get immediate hits, real names, real leads. The NYPD has their own facial recognition technology, but it's limited. Their system can only compare against mugshots, so if a suspect doesn't already have a criminal record, it's a dead end. Clearview doesn't have this problem. One detective called it the game changer. Another said it helped them catch a child abuser. Officers were texting each other about it. They weren't just testing it anymore, they were using it. In total, during this free trial period, the New York City Police Department ran over 11,000 searches in just a few months. In March 2019, the Indiana State Police signed a 1-year, $49,000 contract, becoming Clearview's first official law enforcement client. Law enforcement agencies in Tennessee, Florida, London, North Carolina, even Interpol and the Australian Federal Police requested access. The Department of Homeland Security even signed a contract, and all while this app was still unknown to the general public. But that wouldn't last very long. In November 2019, an activist named Freddie Martinez gets back a public records request he filed to the Atlanta Police Department. Inside, is a legal memo explaining why it's perfectly legal for police to use a facial recognition tool called Clearview AI. This memo claimed that 200 law enforcement agencies were already using it and that it had scraped billions of faces from the internet. Freddie immediately sent this information to a New York Times reporter named Kashmir Hill. Hill immediately begins investigating. Something feels off. Clearview is not a well-known name. There's no major public press releases. There's no founder interviews. The website isn't even trying to sell you anything. It's just a login portal with a fake address. She gets in touch with Sergeant Nick Ferrara from Gainesville. He's excited, calls Clearview amazing, says he'd be their spokesperson if they asked him to. He even offers to demo the app for her. All she needs to do is send him over a few selfies. So she does. Ferrara never responds. So she tries again. Another officer. He runs her face and gets no results. That's weird. This is supposedly revolutionary facial recognition technology, and it can't even identify a New York Times journalist that has no doubt hundreds of photos of herself online. He runs another. And then he gets a phone call. Two months later, Kashmir Hill publishes her bombshell, the secretive company that might end privacy as we know it, in the January 18th edition of the New York Times. For the first time, the world learns about the secretive startup supplying facial recognition software to over 600 law enforcement agencies, a tool trained on more than 3 billion images stolen from your social media accounts without anyone's consent. Within days of the article's release, class action lawsuits start piling up. Clearview has a meeting with the Department of Defense. A man in Detroit is wrongfully arrested due to a faulty Clearview match, and suddenly the tech giants like Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn all start firing off cease and desist letters. Even Facebook, whose board member Peter Thiel helped start Clearview, demand the company stop scraping data from its platforms. BuzzFeed leaks Clearview's client list, which include companies like Macy's and Walmart, allegedly using the software to spy on shoppers. The world, however, is preoccupied. Wonton Thought goes on a press run trying to defend the company. Then on May 28th, the ACLU sues Clearview under Illinois' Biometric Information Privacy Act, arguing that the company's mass collection of face data violates state law. Clearview defends itself under the First Amendment, claiming it's just Google, but for faces. This would prove itself somewhat true the next year when Clearview was used to help identify protesters, including those involved in the Capitol riot. Wan used this to claim proof that Clearview can be used for good. We're slowly winning people over. In June, the Office of U.S. Government Accountability revealed at least 14 federal agencies were involved with facial recognition tools, and at least 10 of them were using Clearview itself, including the FBI, Secret Service, ATF, DEA, ICE, and even the U.S. Park Police. Later that year, France, Italy, Canada, Australia, and the UK all declare Clearview's system illegal. Fines today top over $100 million. 2022, Russia invades Ukraine. Reports surface of Ukrainians using this tool to identify dead Russian troops and send photos to their family members as a form of psychological warfare. By 2023, Clearview had over 30 billion faces in its database and had been used by the US police over 1 million times. While Clearview was growing on the outside, it was rotting from the inside. Co-founder Charles Johnson sued the company, claiming he was cut out unfairly and denied millions in commissions. In his filings, he also reveals that both he and Peter Thiel were FBI informants. Then, earlier this year, Johnson drops the lawsuit, telling reporters that it was at the request of Homeland Security. In April, shareholders voted to remove Wonton Thought from the board just weeks after he stepped down as president, with the company's new CEO telling Forbes, "We are taking the company in a different direction." That direction seemingly being securing contracts with the Trump administration. This is Luigi Mangione. I'm assuming most of you know who this is. These are 2 photos of Mangione you have probably never seen before. These photos are hosted on obscure photography sites, probably without the owners even realizing Luigi is in them. I found these photos through a website called PimEyes. For just $30 a month, you too can become a stalker. This website can identify people out of a crowd. It can recognize someone that has half their face covered, and it's likely nowhere near as powerful as Clearview. Clearview is by far the most controversial when it comes to facial recognition software, but the real arms race started back when Juan was working on video. Facebook has been tagging users in photos automatically since at least 2010. By 2013, it had deepface, which was used to target ads and train their AI. Google uses facial recognition to organize your personal photos. Unlike Clearview, it doesn't scrape photos from the internet, they just leverage what you give them willingly. Similar to Apple using your face as your password. Amazon builds and sells recognition directly to law enforcement. The IRS uses facial recognition just to identify who you are. Even Madison Square Garden has used facial recognition software to ban lawyers from entering if the firm they work at has had an active lawsuit against the garden's parent company. None of this is exactly groundbreaking. Clearview happened because a few people had almost nothing to lose and everything to gain. Real-time facial recognition is now accessible to everyone. Our faces were taken, stored, indexed. Now a handful of companies are selling them to police, to your employer, to advertisers, or to anyone with $30.